Welcome to the World of Horror Podcast, episode 105. I'm Mom.
And I'm Mac.
This is the podcast where we share our love of international horror. Fear is universal, but we are not afraid of subtitles. What? It's probably still really loud. This week, it's Mac's pick of genre, and Mac has chosen movies about urban legends. We reviewed La Llorona from Guatemala and CANDYMAN 1992 from the U.S. Before we get into it, fair warning, these discussions will include spoilers and language which may not be suitable for all listeners. Let's move on to our first segment, Mom and Mac Chat. Hi, Mac. How's it going?
Hi, Mom. It's okay. I told you right beforehand I'm a little bit anxious because, and I think this should be illegal, but landlord company is doing a in-house inspection tomorrow. And, I just don't think they should be allowed to do that, especially if I have a cat that throws up on the carpets.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be allowed to do that. She's got like a tunnel and like a little, I don't know, cube. And I'm thinking about just strategically placing those, and like, what is she going to do? Kick them aside and be like, get that shit out of the way. If she does, I'll be like,
I think when this person comes, you should just like act like, I don't know, you're like super busy and you don't have time to deal with them.
I already kind of did that. Well, because last week they were like on Monday. They're like, can we come over on Wednesday? And so I lied. I was like, I'll be out by then and I can't have somebody alone with my cat. She'll try to run out the door. So I don't know. Alan told me to stop worrying, but I can't.
Yeah, I think I would say the same thing. Like I said, I think they're looking for, really extreme behavior. I don't think you guys are engaging in anything that extreme. So they just want to, and like I said, this is just somebody who just has to check a box off on a clipboard.
Yeah. I was just thinking too, whenever they do the final inspection, like I just don't even want to be there. Like I want to leave Alan there because he has no anxiety about it. Like if I were not the one cleaning the carpets, they wouldn't have even been cleaned. So I'm like, right. How can you exist like this? Like that's so powerful. I've been legit losing sleep over it. Like since we moved in, like since the first time Berwin threw up, I've been like, it's all over. It's all over.
Even if they made you like replace all the carpeting in the place, which they wouldn't, but even if they did, it wouldn't be something you should lose sleep over. Like I used to clean houses for a living. Like when I was in college, I worked for a company and we would do move outs for like, I don't know, like college students. I mean, you would not believe what people do to their living spaces.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I really wouldn't worry about it because I've seen I've seen where you live and it's fine. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah. I think my standards are like way too high. Like it's not even that I am even that clean. It's more like I think everybody else is judging me by a metric that's like so exponential. And then sometimes when I see some people who are like, this is my depression room and there's like cockroaches everywhere, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I was setting the bar a little bit too high. Because like and there's no offense to people who have maybe ever let a space get that bad, but like my depression spaces are like I haven't vacuumed and I haven't vacuumed in a month, or there's crumbs on the floor, or the stove is kind of dirty. To me, that's like, oh my God, like I've ruined everything.
Here's another thought. Maybe you should hire somebody to clean your place.
Yeah, I've thought about that. Like, but then part of me is like, Do the landlords deserve me spending that much time, like,
Not
cleaning
for
it?
them, for you. So you wouldn't feel so much anxiety.
That's fair. I literally beforehand, like, I was looking at the carpet and I just was like, I had to take a second and just be like, you just have to be okay with it. Like, you just have to decide that you're okay with it, or else this is just going to get crazy.
I don't know.
How are you?
Well, I don't know. I'm fine. A couple of things. I mean, I turned in all my grades early, except for my side hustle, because I can't turn anything until Friday, even though I'm for all intents and purposes done. But they're like, please don't turn anything till Friday. I'm like, ooh, okay. So, but that's just like 20 kids. So that's not a big deal. And then I just have a couple more things until I'm done, like officially, on break. But also, it's Mother's Day in the US on Sunday. Mm-hmm. And it's not my favorite, to be honest.
That's fair.
Yeah. I mean, I dislike Father's Day more.
Yeah, at least for Mother's Day, you count as a mom.
Yeah.
So you get stuff.
Right. It's just, I don't know. Some of these holidays are just so fraught with so much, like, I don't know, emotion and expectation and stuff. So my therapist was like, last time I was in there, I was like, everything's going great. Things are fine, whatever. In these like major areas of my life that I come see you and talk to you, everything seems to be fine. She goes, well, Mother's Day is coming up. I'm like, motherfucker, because my mom died in September of 2021, I guess. And so it's like, she was like, maybe you should be ready for that. So I made a plan to go hang out with my sister on that day. Mm-hmm. And you actually said you're going to come.
Yeah, I'll come.
So I think it'll be kind of fun. But it's just sort of like that's coming up.
Yeah, dread. Existential dread. Holidays, the older I get, I know I'm not that old, but the older I get, the more I'm like, these kind of suck. Like, I don't know, it just kind of sucks to have, like, not to sound like a fucking misanthrope, but like Christmas, I don't think I've enjoyed Christmas this season in years. Like, just because I'm like, man, shut the fuck up. Like, I don't know. Just like, this, I don't know. Like, it's not real. Like, I know some people are, some people must truly love it, but most of it, I'm like, it's fake. We're not all happy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I see families and I'm like, I know some good families must exist, but like, so many of these Christmases must be traumatic for some people. And I don't know. And same thing with like Mother's Day and Father's Day, where I'm just like, I don't know, the image that just gets put out is like, everybody loves this. And, everybody has this beautiful, like, and I don't know why it makes me mad. I don't like it.
Yeah, I think we should really make up our own holidays, at a certain point, because the ones that we had, like, that the whole culture celebrates or whatever, are dumb.
Yeah.
And and like holidays that center around family.
We need less of those.
That's like all of ours. So like Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving. Not Easter. You can kind of get away with not celebrating Easter, like, especially if you don't have kids. Little kids.
But if you do, like, I feel like Easter, though, can be a huge, like, horrible family thing. Like, if your family's, like, super religious, but you're not, oh boy, that must suck.
Yeah. So I think we need to make up some new ones.
That's why like Friendsgiving. That's a great idea.
That is a great idea. And anniversary of the podcast.
Which everybody should be celebrating.
Or just like, I don't know, more like pagan, markers, like,
yeah,
it's springtime. Wee.
Let's all have fun and be merry.
Yeah.
What's a great holiday to me? Labor Day. Give me the day off work and then I'll say it's a great holiday. That's the only thing good about Christmas. I hate talking about it though. I feel like I sound like such a wow, what a grump.
No, I feel like with a lot of holidays, unless you have little children in your life, they're really not fun.
Yeah. And Christmas is only fun if you have kids. I think. Or are a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's kind of weird. Like, how do you get little kids into your life? Like, if, it's like, you could. I mean, if you are part of like a community center or a church or something like that, you probably know some little kids, or if you teach little kids or whatever. But if you don't, then it's like, I mean, I've been saying this for years to Mr. C. Like, I need some little kids in my life. Like,
I feel that. Like, I really have no experience with being around. Like, it seems weird to say, but like, I feel like in our family, I was the baby, and got my cousin. Well, got one cousin, who's 8 years younger than me, but was never around her. So like, I didn't like really. I know some people are like, it's you don't have to be worried about being around kids, but I genuinely don't know how to talk to them. Like, I feel so, and then I feel so awkward like around them. But I hang out with every Wednesday. Alan and I have Survivor night where we go over to, I guess now, a family friend's house. I guess we're a little family now, and they have three daughters, two of which just turned 14, and that's crazy to me. But I think it's less that I'm comfortable talking to them. It's more like they're so good at bringing me into the conversation and talking to me. But it's like, I love talking to kids though, like when I'm in that situation, because they're so funny. And the littlest girl, I hope if she ever listens to this, she doesn't get offended, but she's so weird. And like, she reminds me so much of me as a kid. Like, she'll just say the most out there and like really kind of like creepy thing. And like, I think it's so funny. And I wish I could communicate to her in some way, like, I know you, like, I understand you. And yeah, you don't get that if you're just around adults. They don't say, if they do say weird things, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's only certain windows of your life in which you can be like really weird. Like,
yeah,
if you're a kid, you can be weird, up to a point. If you're really old, you can be weird. And I'm going to lean into that so hard. But I mean, the last like little kid I was around was like, I don't know, I guess she was like 12, Cole's kid. And I just acted really bored. Like, I was like not interested in her at all. And she thought I was so cool. So you can try that. Like, just be like, and I really wanted her to like me, but like, I didn't want her to know that. So
yeah, I feel that about the friends' kids that we see. Is I'm just like, I hope they think fondly of me. I hope they're like, oh, Mac's coming over. That's great.
But I think if you're just, nice, I think that's, if you're kind and you're not like, I think in our family, we have this, this thing I'm just learning is not universal, which is growing up with sarcasm and like dissing people. That's not normal. I just learned that like a month ago when I was comparing notes with my boyfriend. I'm like, did you and your sisters like just like give each other shit all the time? He's like, no. Like, oh.
I felt that sometimes with Sam, to the listeners, my brother. I was about to say, my brother, but of course, duh. But it's like, and truly, I did not think of this in like in an abusive way, but he's an older brother, so of course he would like hit me with pillows sometimes, or like would like pick me up, or like then throw me on the couch. It's like, but then sometimes if you say that to people, they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, but it was fun because I kicked him sometimes. I remember one Christmas I did kick him in the mouth.
Whoa.
So yeah. So I feel like it was even, but it was never like hostile. It was just
right.
I feel like that is what big brothers do.
But I feel like, and maybe, and hopefully it's a little better like for you and your brother. But like me and my sibs, even now as like 50-something-year-old grown ass people, are just like my brother just calls my sister Shorty, and it's like, okay, yeah, she's short. It's not it's so stupid.
That's also how he is, though. He's like, I feel like very sarcastic.
Yeah, but I feel like I thought that was just normal, you know. And I do think it's somewhat cultural because we grew up in the Midwest. But no, it's not. Not everybody is like that. So
that reminds me, like, because that's definitely how I talk to my dad. Like, but he thinks it's so funny.
Right,
like, he thinks it's hilarious. But then my stepmom, when they first got together, I overheard her saying, like, the way Mac disrespects you, you know, and he was like, please, like, it's not like that at all.
Right.
Like, and to me, as long as it doesn't get too, you know, there is a way to go too far, but I feel like if you're just teasing, I think that's a display of love, you know, because I feel like sometimes if we pretend that the people we love aren't annoying sometimes, I feel like that can be toxic in itself, you know? Whereas, like, if we can just accept that, like, if you're around somebody enough, you'll see every part of them, and every part of somebody is kind of annoying sometimes. So then if you just kind of tease them a little bit, I feel like that shows, like, I see you, but, like, I love you, you know? Because if you really hated it, you wouldn't be like, hey, this thing, like, you shouldn't. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I feel like if you can be earnest and serious and also, you know, give your loved one shit, that's great. That's like ideal. But if all you can do is give them shit and call it love, well,
yeah,
maybe you should stretch yourself a little bit and try to be sincere. But
yeah,
like, sincerity, sometimes it freaks me out. Like, if someone pays me a genuine compliment, I'm like, shut the fuck, get out, shut up.
I'm like, why are you making fun of me right now?
I know. Are you being serious right now? And they're like, yeah, I'm being like fucking for real. Like, okay, I don't know how to deal with that because that's
what do I
just
do
not,
with this?
No, I don't like it.
Okay, I'll just put that aside for now.
Fuck you. No, it's like Succession is like this, like on steroids. I really love it. Like, none of those Roy kids can deal with like a sincere moment, like ever. And I'm not that bad, but I see it, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, so new holidays. I guess that's the new plan. Creating new holidays.
That's why Halloween is the best holiday.
It is.
We knocked it out of the park with that one. That's the best holiday.
It really is.
I have no notes.
Do you have any movies or games or music or anything that you wanted to shout out? We haven't done that lately.
Yeah. Actually, I've been really obsessed with this game. It came out, there was a lot of hype around it for a little bit, but I kind of missed it. It came out last year, I think, or the year before, but it's called Cult of the Lamb, and it is really silly, but also really cute. It's the style of it, it's very, very cute looking, and basically you play this lamb who is killed by these like 4 bishops, but then you're brought back by this god that's kind of like chained up, and he's like, all right, you are my new vessel. Get a cult and kill these 4 bishops to release me. So then it's like a dungeon crawler where, you know, you're fighting enemies and then the bishops are the final bosses. But then also you have to take care of your cult. Like, you have to keep their loyalty up. You have to keep them fed. You have to make sure they're not sick or exhausted. And they'll get resources for you and worship you, and that helps you unlock new things in the game. And yeah, right, I basically beat the whole game in like 20 hours, and now I'm in the post game, and I'm just decorating my cult, and it's really fun. You sacrifice them sometimes, you know, but then you can issue new doctrines. So like, one of my doctrines is, we believe in sacrifice. It's okay. So now people actually enjoy it when I sacrifice people. They're like, yay!
Wow.
Yeah, that's a cute little game. Yeah. I really like it. How about you?
I'm almost through a K-drama. I haven't watched a K-drama in a while, but I zoomed through this one. It's called The Glory.
Is that the bullying one?
Yeah, it's the bullying one. I was telling you about it. And it's like so fucked up. But it's like this girl is bullied. She has a terrible mother. And then fast forward, 17 years, and she's exacting revenge on all her bullies. And she meets this, of course, really disgustingly beautiful man. And she uses him to teach her how to play Go. So anyway, it's like a whole thing. But he's also really fucked up. And so his dad, his dad was killed by a serial killer.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so he's got unprocessed trauma. And yeah, it's perfect. And it's 16 episodes long, but sometimes K-drama, the episode length for each episode is like an hour and a half. Yeah. But these are more like 45 minutes. So that's a little more manageable. But yeah, and also wanted to shout out Grace Jung's podcast, K-Drama School, where she's a stand-up comedian. So it's an interesting podcast. She does like half K-drama, and then she'll have an interview with like a stand-up comedian friend, and she's an academic and she's great. So listen to Grace Jung's K-Drama School too, because that's what I listen to figure out what to watch.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
That's it.
One more. I think I told you one time while we were messaging about this. I've been like obsessed with this YouTuber. He does like let's play videos of really, really indie horror games. Like so small that like the developers are usually in his comments like, "Thank you for playing my game." And his name is it's kind of silly, but it's Manly Badass Hero. And yeah, his voice is very soothing, and he's not like a crazy YouTuber of like, "Whoa, this is crazy." Since he's had his channel for like a decade, so he has a lot of just insight into how a lot of games are, so much so that like when he first starts playing it, he can just kind of guess what's going to happen. But it's still I really like his videos. I'll have him on while I'm drawing. Yeah, highly recommend.
Great. Well, hey, Mac.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into it?
Let's get into it. So this was like my third or fourth time watching Candyman, and I feel like this episode kind of also inadvertently became a story about like stories about inequality, I guess. Also, like, yes. maybe there's something. I mean, there probably is. People have probably already talked about this, but like the correlation of like urban legends and like oppression. Know, I feel like there is a deep intertwinement of that. All right, here's the plot summary for Candyman. The Candyman, a murderous soul with a hook for a hand, is accidentally summoned to reality by a skeptic grad student researching the monster's myth. It was directed by Bernard Rose, screenplay also by Bernard Rose, based on The Forbidden by Clive Barker, which is a part of a bunch of short stories he released. And it stars Virginia Madsen, Tony Todd, Xander Berkeley, and Casey Lemons. And also Vanessa Williams. I feel like she plays a great part. Cinematography by Anthony B. Richmond and edited by Dan Ray. It was released September 11th, 1992 at TIFF and October 16th, 1992 in the US. Runtime 101 minutes, and Mom and I both rented it on Prime. It used to be on Shudder or Netflix, but I feel like if you have something on a platform, you shouldn't be allowed to take it off. Though apparently I had rented it twice, so I guess I should just buy it. I know. I'm having this quandary, like, especially with stuff that we do for the podcast. I'm like, should I just buy it? Because I'm probably going to watch it at least twice. Yeah, and to rent it, like $5 every time, it's like, you might as well buy it. That's how they get you. Amazon. So we start off with a great, very, very Clive Barker quote. "What's blood for, if not for shedding? With my hook for a hand, I will split you from groin to gullet." I love Clive Barker. Who I'm sure there's other people maybe who have a similar style, but I mean, who else? Who else has such buck wild lines like that? Like, and I'm still all for it.
And there's a line later where he's like, the pain will be exquisite. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
You okay, Clive?
He gets it. I feel like he gets gothic horror.
Yeah.
We begin looking over the Cabrini Green, Chicago area, because this movie has a lot of notes, the overt context of like gentrification. And I was looking at the Wikipedia article, and apparently they were in the short story, it was set in Clive Barker's native Liverpool, but Rose was shocked by Chicago's dynamic architecture and amount of prejudice that he changed it to Chicago and scouted locations and found Cabrini Green. So I thought that was really interesting, and it definitely does set the tone immediately. So here we have Helen, who is a grad student, a beautiful woman played by Virginia Madsen. She's just so pretty. We begin with an example of the Candyman. So it starts off, Helen is being told the story of Candyman, where there's this babysitter who invites her, this, not her boyfriend, a bad guy that she is into. And it's played by one of the Raimis. I don't remember which one. Maybe Ted Raimi?
Oh, really?
Candyman. Yep, it's Ted Raimi. It's so funny because no offense to him, but I would never peg him as like the bad boy, but he's great with his little no line part. So, they're kind of getting it on, and she asks him, "Do you know the story of Candyman?" She says, "Yeah, he's got a hook for a hand, and if you say his name in the mirror 5 times, he'll come get you." So they say the name 4 times because they chicken out. He goes back downstairs, and she looks into the mirror one more time and says it. And then there's a flash, and the Candyman is right behind her, gets her.
There's blood dripping from the ceiling.
Yes, he's sitting downstairs, and this blood just starts pooling from the ceiling, and he finds her slashed groin to gullet. We find out that Helen is collecting legends with her friend and peer Bernadette at the U of I. They are doing their thesis about urban legends and are particularly interested in the Candyman. Helen then goes over to a class where we see this kind of older guy, a little bit older than Helen, finishing up a lecture talking about urban legends, asking students if they know of any, and this one girl's talking about the classic, there's alligators living in the sewer, and they're albino because they've been living down there, and then they get really big. And it happened in this city. And another student says, "No, it happened in this city. I read about it in the paper." And, then he just says, "Yeah, these are urban folklore, classic oral folklore." Ends the class. Love how in movies, it's always the professor gives a great speech 5 seconds before the class ends. And so Helen goes over to talk to him, and there's a very, very pretty young student talking with him. Get the sense that Helen, is this confirmed that she was his student and then married him? I'm pretty sure that's part of it.
Oh, I didn't get that, but maybe.
Makes sense. Because she's a lot prettier and younger than him. No offense to that guy. But she's so beautiful. I'm like, why are you not that looks are everything, but anyways. So Helen kind of gives him shit because she's like, "Hey, what the fuck? Me and Bernadette are doing interviews about urban legends, and you just like fucking ruined it." And, he's very condescending, like, "I can't change the curriculum just for you." Anyways, there's some weirdness there. So Helen goes to transcribe her story in very 1992 fashion. She's got this, I don't know, she's not typing it on Word, it's very, I don't know how to describe it.
MS-DOS?
Yeah, it's like blue screen, just click, 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 click. I don't know.
She's got a clackety-clack machine.
She's got the clacketiest of clackety. And so Helen's transcribing her story, and she's talking with another student about Candyman. And this one cleaning woman says like, oh, you're talking about Candyman? I know somebody who knows about it, and calls over another woman. I feel like it's important that these two women are Black, and they are telling Helen about how there was this story of this girl at Cabrini Green who had a man attack her, and somebody called the police over and over again, but the police didn't come. And when they finally did, she was already dead. And I don't know. It just starts. I feel like this is definitely a movie, I think, made for white people looking at oppression, because I mean the main character is a white woman viewing it, so I feel like we're viewing it from her lens. And at the same time, I feel like it does do a very good job of being very explicit about like, look at this horrible inequality that exists here. So Helen and Bernadette are gonna go get the story, so they decide to go to Cabrini Green. Bernadette is very reticent about it. She's like, hey, this place, there's a shooting there every week, and you know there's a bunch of drug dealers there. And Helen's like, listen, do you think she asked Bernadette, do you think Trevor and these other grad guys doing their thesis would go there? And she says no. She's like, yeah, exactly, that's why we have to go there. They're two young women trying to make it in the academic world. So they
all that happens, they talk to the cleaning women who are kind of like, well, I don't know that much about it, which I kind of like, because they don't give them like the full. Yeah, they're very reticent to like give them a lot of. And then Helen and Bernadette, I think it's in Helen's house.
Yes, yeah, okay, because Helen then is relating that her apartment was renovated from an old space that Cabrini Green was at. So, I mean, she's literally a part of a gentrified area, and that the way that her apartment is very similar to the woman who died in the story. And she shows Bernadette that if she removes her medicine cabinet, there's just a very flimsy wall separating it from the apartment on the other side. And luckily there's nobody there, but Helen's very like blasé about this, she thinks it's kind of cool and thinks it's interesting and doesn't have a sense of danger. Whereas Bernadette, who is a Black woman, is like, this is scary. Like, this is fucked up. This is scary. And so I find that detail also great, that they seem to kind of live in two different worlds. Like, Helen's this kind of bright-eyed, like, nothing can happen to me,
That's a really good point. And I feel like that is something that people who are privileged in our society do have, that sort of confidence that other people don't have. I know that I have it. Like, I grew up in a town where you didn't have to lock your front door. And my boyfriend didn't, and so he's always, I mean, I've gotten into the habit of locking doors now, but yeah, it took a little adjusting because most of my life I lived in it. Yeah, what could happen to me? I just sort of like navigate safe spaces most of the time. And so, yeah, I think that's a really good insight, Mac, because, and this movie is really, it's really good. And you just don't like the layers that were sort of sewn into it. You can't necessarily see them on the first viewing, but they're there.
Yeah. And it reminds me of one time you, Sam, and I were driving somewhere, and we stopped at this kind of like very rural gas station. And I kind of was like, I think I'm going to stay in the car. And Sam at first was like, why? And he went inside. And when he came back, he was like, I understand now why you stayed in the car. And I've never thought about that before, but that really sucks. And I was like, yeah, thank you. Thank you for realizing that, like, yeah, there's some places where I'm just like, I don't know if it would be good to expose myself to this area. But if you've never lived with that, or have never had that imposed upon you, that's why it's important to hear other people's stories so we can understand that.
And I mean, we really do like Helen. Like, she's very appealing, but she is pretty arrogant. And
she's kind of entitled too. She kind of thinks she's entitled to this. And it's not even that she's not like a character that's very outwardly stuffy and like rich and hoity-toity. She doesn't even realize she's entitled. She thinks she's being nice. But every Black person she communicates with, I think, understands this about her.
Yeah, and I mean, she's in an interesting position because she doesn't have as much power as the white men in her life. But she definitely,
That's a great detail too, because I feel like that's kind of the issue with white feminism, is I mean, that's the whole suffragist movement, right? Was like, we're not really upset. We're more upset that Black men got this before we did, And so then it's kind of like, are you really for women? Because I think you're just about for white women.
Right.
And it's such an important piece of equality to understand. So Helen and Bernadette are looking in the mirror, and Helen's like, let's say it. And they say Candyman 4 times, and Bernadette's like, nope, not going for that 5th time. And Helen, of course, says it for the 5th time. Nothing happens yet. So, and I don't remember, is there any sort of like...
There's a stupid jump scare later that night. She's lying in bed, and her stupid asshole husband like jumps on her.
And he's like sloshed, it's
he's
middle
really
of the night,
and she's already been like asleep, and so he's, I think it's setting up. We had the pretty undergrad already, who he seemed to be paying a lot of attention to, and now he's coming home late and drunk, so
suspicious. This is why, hey, ladies, and I mean, men too. I think it happens to young men too. But if there's an older gentleman who's showing a lot of favor to you, I just think it's important to remember we all age, and they chose a younger person for a reason, and just be wary. It's the same thing with people who date cheaters. It's kind of like, you don't think that's ever going to happen to you. But, if somebody cheats on someone with you, they're going to cheat on you. So Bernadette and Helen go to Cabrini Green because they are determined to really get the real story, which involves actually going there. Again, Bernadette is pretty uneasy about it, but and she even says, like, we're dressed like cops. They're going to think that we're cops, and they're not going to talk to us. And then later, Helen actually uses that as like, well, they think we're cops, so they're not going to do anything to us. So when they get there, there are kind of a few guys outside who kind of like whistle at them, and they're like, hey, where are you going? But they just ignore them and go upstairs. Helen's taking a lot of pictures. And again, I think we see the entitlement here because this is a real space people are living in. This is a really rundown area that's been forgotten and full of graffiti and whatnot. And she's like, this is great, and taking photos of it. And we then see a young woman with a great dog who is like, hey, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, excuse me, sorry. And Bernadette's like, yeah, come on. This is somebody's house or apartment that they live in. They find the area which was where the young woman was killed, and they find said mirror with the space on the back. And Helen's like, all right, hold my camera, I'm going in. Bernadette's just like, what the fuck is wrong with you? So she climbs through the mirror, and man, these scenes are just great. The set design is amazing. It's very dirty and dark, and there's just so many layers that she keeps going through until eventually she climbs out of this hole. And when the camera pans out, we see there's this giant like painting mural of an open-mouthed Candyman that she's walking through. She's literally going into like the belly of the beast. And, she looks around, takes some photos, and she had told Bernadette she was only going to be 5 minutes. So she comes back. She's like, I'm going back in. And Bernadette's like, the fuck you are. Let's go. Anne Marie is there again. Like, what are you doing in there? Somebody got killed there, and they ask her if they could talk to her about what happened, because she was actually the one who called the cops. And so Anne Marie is just in her apartment with her little baby Anthony and her dog. And, she is a single working woman. She's wearing her uniform and is just telling them that she heard the screams called the police so many times and they didn't come. And we also meet her little baby Anthony, and Helen kind of helps her a little bit because she's having a little bit of issue, and she loves her son. She's like says something like, just that she cares so much about him and she's putting everything into raising him. So later we see Helen and Bernadette having dinner with Trevor, Helen's wife, and this Professor Purcell. Oh my God, this guy is the worst. He's got like long scholarly hair, but it does not look good on him, not to be rude. And he's just so hoity-toity. Helen's kind of having enough of it. And she's like, we're doing our thesis on urban legends and we're going to bury you. And they talk about going to Cabrini Green. And of course, this fucking guy is like, oh, you're doing it on Candyman. Well, you should know I already put something out 10 years ago about it. So you're going to bury me? And he's like, do you even know the story? She goes, no. And so he tells her that the man that the story is based on, Candyman, he was a slave, but was an artist, was still raised with like, to know, I guess, the finer things. I'm not quite sure about that. He was a son of a slave, and he grew up to be a well-known painter. Yeah, he was going to paint this, a portrait of this man's virginal young daughter, who's white, and they end up falling in love, and she becomes pregnant. So he was killed. His arm got sawed off, and there was an apiary nearby, and they covered him in the honeycombs. The bees killed him through bee sting. Just horrible. And again, I feel like what a great detail that this is like a professor telling this story as if it is just, some story where it's like a heinous thing, a heinous, example of, the horrible oppression that Black people face and have faced. So Helen goes back to Cabrini Green and she meets this young boy named Jake. She's trying to look through, again, she's kind of a little freak. She goes back to Anne Marie's apartment and is like looking through the window. The dog jumps up and scares her. And this little boy, Jake, is like, she's out, she's at work. And so she asks him if he knows anything about Candyman. And he's like, well, I'm not going to tell you or else the Candyman's going to get me. And so but he says that he knows where another boy was killed by Candyman and is going to show her. So they pass by this giant bonfire pile. He tells the story of this boy who was killed by Candyman, and it's just another horrible story. Like the boy, did the Candyman, he like cut the boy's penis off and put it in a toilet, and it was just horrible. So Helen goes in, and they did a great job. This bathroom looks disgusting. It smells, and there's a message written in like feces that says
sweets to the sweet.
Yeah, sweets to the sweet.
That was also on the outside of Anne Marie's door.
Yeah, that's what she took a photo of.
Yeah. And
she opens up, the stall, and there's just an arrow pointing down into the toilet. And these guys kind of pass Jake, who's just standing outside, and this man walks in. A bunch of men walk in, and there's a guy, wearing a big coat, holding a hook, and he says that he's Candyman, and him and some other guys just beat her and leave. And so Jake comes in, finds her, and calls for help. So she is just like fucked up. They did a great job with this makeup, like her eyes swollen shut. And she identifies this guy in a lineup, and he is put away. So then it's like she was healing for a week, and she even makes the comment like wow, one white woman gets hurt, and all these people came to my aid and put this guy away, and the same wasn't true for the people who lived at Cabrini Green. So she and Bernadette are gonna work on the thesis later that night, and they're in the parking garage. Bernadette leaves, and when she's in the parking garage, she hears somebody calling her name, and she sees the real Candyman, Tony Todd in all his glory, standing, a few yards away. And he's wearing this great coat, has a real hook for a hand and a bloody stump, and puts her into a trance and tells her to be his victim. So later, she's in a trance being like, but I have to go. And he's just walking closer and closer to her. She then wakes up in a bathroom covered in blood with the screams of a woman. And she's, freaked out herself. When she opens up the door, she finds the head of a dog and a cleaver. Now, why would she do this? She picks up the cleaver.
Yeah.
Like, why would you do
maybe as protection, but yeah, it's a real dumb move.
Yeah. And the whole apartment is covered in blood, and Anne-Marie is over the crib where Anthony was, and it's just covered in blood, and she's just screaming, like ripping her hair out, sees Helen, comes over and, starts attacking her. She's like, where is he? Where is he? So Helen grabs the cleaver. She's like banging Helen's head against the floor. So she grabs the cleaver and cuts her in the arm. Just then the police come in and, see Helen with the cleaver and Anne-Marie and take Helen away. So the same detective that helped her before when she was attacked is now there like, hey, and they're really, I should say first, when she's first taken in, we see her disrobing for this female officer, and she's sobbing, covered in blood. And again, this is where the horror for me comes in, because for her, she's been put into this situation. She doesn't know why she's there, but to everybody else, she's a horrible, dog killer, attacked an innocent woman, stole her child, maybe killed him. And so the officer is just like nonplussed, as she's just slowly, taking everything off. She keeps asking, can I please have a shower? And she's just like, lift your right breast, lift your left breast. Now she's being very like dehumanized, but they think, yeah, good, you're a killer. So then we see her showered, talking to the detectives, who are like, where is he? And she's like, I don't know. They don't, hurt her, but they're getting very aggressive with it. And she calls Trevor. It's 3 a.m. And the phone just keeps ringing. There's nobody home. Weird. So then she's in her cell, gets a cigarette. I'm like,
yeah, how did she get the cigarette?
Do they give inmates cigarettes?
No, I don't think so. I think they take basically everything away from you.
Yeah, it's kind of the point, right? But Trevor then comes to get her the next morning. And again, I was like, interesting. Like this woman maybe kidnapped, a child, and she just gets let go. And I feel like they don't really explain that very much. Like, would that be possible?
I don't know, but I kind of doubt it. I mean, well, they say
she's arrested.
But they don't have any evidence that she did anything with the baby. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't have any direct evidence that she's kidnapped the baby, and all she did, I guess, potentially, is cut the head off of the dog. So,
and attacked Anne-Marie.
Well, and attacked Anne-Marie, yeah. But I mean, if Trevor made bail, I guess she could be released until her court date or whatever.
Yeah. Again, does seem like an example, even though they don't really point it out, does seem like an example of privilege to me. Because like, what the fuck?
Well, a lot of people can't make bail, for one thing.
That's why bail in itself is like so fucked up.
They have a very nice apartment for two academics. I mean,
yeah. Like, he must be famous or something.
I mean, it's insanely nice. And I wondered if it looks very similar to, I think it's the art dealer's apartment in 2021's Candyman. But I think it is.
Yeah. Helen then takes a bath, drinks some beer, smokes, and Trevor comes to visit her, and she asks, where were you last night? He says, yeah, I was here, knocked out the whole night. But, she's a little bit sus. So she she then, is looking at photo slides that she took and sees like kind of this technology doesn't
I know.
exist, but like enhances to an extreme degree seeing that there's a photo of the Candyman behind her, kind of. I don't know how she noticed that because it kind of took me a second. And then, she's looking in the mirror, she's opening up the medicine cabinet, closes it, and then a hook comes through. And so then the Candyman is over her and he's, saying the same stuff like, be my victim, surrender yourself to me, and kind of cuts her below the ear with his hook. Just then, Bernadette comes over with flowers and is knocking on the door. And Helen hears her and just knows what's about to happen. And she's like, Bernadette, like, no. But she can't really scream because she's in so much pain and just is like, go, go. But Bernadette's worried. So she opens the door, sees Candyman, and Candyman kills her. But then when Helen wakes up, she's lying in the kitchen with blood everywhere with a knife right next to her. And Trevor comes home and sees her, and we kind of see the start of Trevor just being like, oh, what the fuck? Because at first they kind of were like, well, maybe she could be innocent, with the first thing. But this time it's like, who else could it be? And so she wakes up, she's handcuffed in bed, and she gets up and runs and sees the corpse of Bernadette just sliced up. So she's committed. We see her in the hospital, tied to a bed, and the Candyman floats over her. And she's like, no, murderer, you're a murderer. And, we see her just kind of getting doped up. These, people are wheeling her around and just kind of, she's like, I want to see my husband. And this guy's like, me too. And, so nobody gives a shit about her anymore. They just kind of think she's an invalid.
Nice little comment about how we treat the mentally ill as well.
Yeah, like they just they're like, who cares about you? And so they bring her over to this doctor, Dr. Burke, who reveals that she's been committed for a month, that they've just had her in this like drug-induced stupor. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, she's obviously horrified. And he's trying to figure out what happened. And he's like, listen, I'm trying to help you. You've been indicted for first-degree murder. And, so he then shows her this, like, footage from that first night. And she's just, there's nobody there. She's just writhing around in bed. And he's like, was the guy who killed, her here? And she's just so shell-shocked. And he asks her, so what happened that night? And she just can't really, I think she knows it sounds so crazy. She can't say anything. So she's like, well, listen, I'll prove it. So she turns, there's a mirror. She turns and calls him. And when she looks back, it's kind of seems like nothing's happened yet because Dr. Burke's still just looking at her. And then a hook goes right through him and he starts coughing up blood as the hook, slices up, and she's freaking out, screaming. So then Candyman comes over, slices her arm restraints off, and is like, come on, like, leave. I'm releasing you, and come with me. And he flies backward out of the window. So Helen then kind of becomes a secret agent. She hides kind of on the ledge. A nurse comes in, knocks her out, steals her clothes, and manages to escape the hospital, not seen. Because her hair still looks great, which was kind of incredible. She also looks very showered.
Yeah, after a month of being like doped up on trazodone or whatever they said they were giving her. Yeah, she looks
There's
amazing.
no way she wouldn't stink to high hell.
That's also true. I had a friend who, speaking of sticking to high hell, I had a friend who, she voluntarily sort of went into a place like this for a weekend. And she came over to my house like right after. She stunk so bad. Just anxiety sweat.
Yeah.
But I just remember when she came over to my house, just like, oh my God. So this is what we smell like after 4 days, of just, and she's like, this is just anxiety. I'm just like covered in anxiety, which, a person would be.
I mean, I suffer from that, like from flop sweat. If I'm any job interview I've ever had afterwards, I stink to high heaven. It's such a problem.
Okay. It's just like, no, I mean, I whatever. I think it's normal.
It's totally normal. It's still gross though when it happens. You're just like, now I'm sticky,
I know. It's like, it's like working out. It's like I have to like, I don't know, working out more. So I'm just like taking like 2 or 3 showers a day. And
this is the absolute worst part about working out. Like I get so red.
I hate. Oh. I mean, I really do. I like the working out. I like the working out part. I just hate the like feeling of sweat drying on your skin. And I don't like that part.
It's the worst.
Sweat. But it's good that we have sweat.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
guess it's good that don't have to pant like dogs. So Helen escapes from the hospital, somehow gets all the way home, back to her apartment. And when she opens the door, she sees that the whole apartment's being redecorated. The walls are pink. Now, I liked the color pink, but I mean, it was a little bit much. And she sees that same grad student from before painting the walls. And she walks in and is like, "Where's Trevor?" And, or no, she doesn't even say anything. She just walks in and the grad student's like, "Oh, Trevor, are you home?" Like, freaks out. That actress was so good. She's just scared out of her mind. Trevor comes in and is like, "Helen, and Helen's just like, "What's the matter? Are you scared?" And, Trevor's like, "I think we should take you back to the hospital." And she's like, "No." And yeah, I wish she would have had a line where she said, "It's only been a month." I so wished that she had that line because that was the most ridiculous thing to me.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Well, no, she does say, "You didn't think I was ever getting out." Something like that. So,
but to me, it's like more egregious that like, if your wife got indicted for murder for killing somebody who you knew to be her best friend and possibly kidnapping a baby. And you're like, after a month, probably before that, if she's moving in, the grad student, like, you're fucked up. Like, you don't even need time to grieve that this person you knew turned out to be like a murderer in your head. I just feel like she should have had a line that's like, "Bro, it's just been 1 month. You move fast."
I know. I don't like his character. He's an asshole, but I mean, even assholes have depth, like this guy's just a scumbag.
We only see it at the end,
Yeah.
But I wish, I don't know, I'm just like, wow, that was fast. So she's like, "You know what? I'm just going to leave." And they immediately go for the phone to call the police. So she's, going walking. She looks into a lake and is then told by the Candyman that she's alone. Oh, yeah, she's walking on a bridge and looks down and Candyman's like, "Now you're all alone. All you have is my desire for you." So she wants to help little Anthony. So she goes back to the apartment and, goes through the little gateway into his world and finds him sleeping. She grabs a hook and cuts him. He roars awake and he tells her, gives this great speech that, she should, because now she's turned his congregation against him. The kind of only thing that gives legends power is people's fear of them. And, he's like, don't you want to be that? You'll live forever in the fears of people. They're going to speak about us for centuries and, you will live forever. And so then we have this amazing scene where he opens up his jacket and we see his like whole torso is just covered inside and out with bees. And he opens up his mouth and bees start flying out. And he goes over to her and kisses her and sends, the bees down her mouth. And it's so good. It's so creepy, and then we also get the great line that, the pain will be exquisite. It's just so good. It's just so good. And, he tells her, give yourself to me and I'll let the child go. So Candyman lied. He takes baby Anthony away, and Helen wakes up and finds a message on the wall saying, it was always you, Helen. Because we see a painting of the woman that the original Candyman had fallen in love with, and it looks just like her. So perhaps it was fate even that, they are together now. So then we see, the bonfire pile, and Helen hears baby Anthony crying inside the bonfire pile. And so she goes in. She's got the hook still to kind of like help her weave through. But when the young boy Jake looks outside, all he sees is the hook descending into the pile. And he's like, oh shit, Candyman's in there. So he calls everybody in Cabrini Green up, and they start dousing the bonfire pile in gasoline. Meanwhile, she is crawling through, and this scene is great. I don't even know how they did this, because she's just around all this debris, pushing it out of the way, where we can see baby Anthony is, just lying there crying. But then Candyman comes up again, and, he's like, both of us are going to be here. And, I've got both of you. And she's like, you lied to me. And so then they start setting fire to the bonfire. And she, as Candyman is holding her, she stabs him with a torch and begins to crawl outside. The flames engulf Candyman, and he is, screaming like, no, get back here. And she begins, actually making it outside of the bonfire, but, she's just catching flame but holding Anthony safe under her. And as she crawls out, a guy comes to help put the fire out, and, even her hair is covered. So now she's bald, just got burns all over her, but she, holds the baby out, and Anne-Marie sees, and grabs him. But Helen then, drops dead. Though in the bonfire, the Candyman had said, like, we're both dead. So perhaps she was already dead.
Yeah. And he also bursts into like 100, he bursts into bees. Like,
yeah. And they all fly out.
Yeah. And, the effect isn't great, but also he says something like, I don't know, like our ashes will mesh together and we'll become one or something. I don't know. It was kind of a beautiful, crazy thought,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And I feel like it's since Jake told everybody and they think Candyman is in there, it's truly the death of his legend, because they're like, we got him, Right. So I feel like he's not, it's like he has no physical form. It's not dying. It's like representing that the only power he has as a legend is gone, because nobody can fear him anymore. But now Helen is the new legend. And they remember her bringing that baby out. And I think they understand that she is not the one, obviously, that took him.
Right.
Because again, it's, when Bernadette is killed, it seems like she sees him, like she sees Candyman. She does not see Helen wielding the knife. It's kind of like Candyman arranged that scene. So I imagine the same is true for everybody. Like maybe Anne-Marie, because we don't know exactly what happened, but maybe Anne-Marie came home to Anthony gone and the dog's head cut off. Because I feel like Candyman would have killed Anne-Marie. We don't know for sure, but I think then Anne-Marie understands that Helen did not take him, because, she just saved him. So then we see the funeral where there's only Trevor. Helen's got no family, huh?
I guess.
Like, Helen's got no parents or anything.
She had one friend.
Yeah, dead. She's got her shitty ex-husband, who brought the new girl, the shitty professor guy, and also just some rando we've never seen before. And I just thought it was funny because, after they lower the casket, the professor guy turns and claps this unknown guy in the back. Who is this? But then we see, they turn and they look, and everybody from Cabrini Green is coming to pay their respects to Helen. And Anne-Marie and Jake stand over the grave, and Jake opens up his shirt and drops the hook down, and, they just pay their respects to her. I do love in the notes you said at the funeral, Trevor and his stupid girlfriend. So then afterward, we see Trevor back home with said stupid GF. We can just see that he's understanding that Helen wasn't just some grad student, that he got with. She was special. She loved him. She truly loved him. And he just, threw her away for a new model. Meanwhile, new girlfriend is like, hey, what should I make? And he's like, I'll be out there in a second. And she starts angrily cutting up chicken, throwing it. And so this is the only human moment we see from him, because he's crying, and he looks into the mirror and is just like saying her name over and over again, 5 times to be precise. And some lightning flashes and we see a ghostly, form of Helen behind him, this time with the top of her head all like a burn scar. And she's like, what's the matter, Trevor? You scared? And she gets him. He screams. Girlfriend comes in holding the knife, and opens the door and finds him cut groin to gullet and just starts screaming. And then we see that there is a new mural of Helen at Cabrini Green where she's kind of like a heavenly figure and they're all like, praising her. And that is the end of the movie.
Very nice.
And I think the newer Candyman that Jordan Peele helped with, because I don't think he directed it. I think he produced it, maybe.
Yeah, he produced it. I think he might have been one of the writers on it.
Yeah. But
Nia DaCosta was the director of that film.
I think it does a really good job tying together with this movie. I don't know, like, again, watching the original over again after watching the remake, you're like, they really did they poured over this movie, and it's, I think, a really loving sequel to it, which focuses then more on, Black characters rather than from the lens of a white character, which was cool.
Yeah, totally agree. And like you said, I can't remember what episode it was, but I guess it was right when Candyman had come out in 2021. And so maybe it was the month after that. You said that you would really recommend this as a double feature.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into some trivia, because if you're like me, you're like, how the fuck did they do this? Because there's no way those bees were CGI. So the bees were bred specifically for this movie, and they needed to make sure that the bees were only 12 hours old so that they looked like mature bees, but their stingers wouldn't be powerful enough to do any real damage. Thank God, I guess. I feel like they made this movie like 30 years before. They probably wouldn't have taken that care.
No, that's true.
So the exterior hallway and stairway scenes were actually filmed for a few days in the infamous Cabrini Green housing projects, though the producers had to make a deal with the ruling gang members to put them in the movie as extras to ensure the cast and crew's safety during filming. I do love the idea of like, all right, you can film here, but we want to be in the movie too. Okay. Even with this arrangement, a sniper put a bullet through the production van on the last day of filming, but luckily no one was injured. Oh, that's gotta be a little bit scary, huh? So the film's opening credits feature a great aerial view of Chicago, which was pretty revolutionary for its time. And, quote, we did that with an incredible new machine called the Skycam, which can shoot up to a 500 millimeter lens with no vibration, Bernard Rose told The Independent. You've never seen that shot before, at least not done that smoothly. I love that answer. Yeah, of course, now I think there's a little bit of a, not overuse, but there's definitely times where you're like, that is a drone. A drone did this. Not that that's bad, but I don't know. Sometimes there's just, I feel like there's also like art and cinematography into getting good shots. And this isn't only an aerial shot. I feel like it's really good. Like, it's well done. Director Bernard Rose had Virginia Madsen and Tony Todd take ballroom dancing classes together so they would have more of a romantic connection when playing their characters. I feel like that worked. I feel like they really did have chemistry.
I heard somewhere that spinning around scene was actually 2 minutes longer but the
Wow.
studio made them cut it because of the interracial stuff. Apparently,
That sucks.
Yeah, it was too sensitive in 1992.
That is so fucked up. And I will say, I read on Wikipedia that the casting for this movie could have been completely different. So they wanted Eddie Murphy for Candyman, but the
Wow.
filmmakers could not afford him. And this is no offense to Eddie Murphy, but I do not think that would have been...
No.
This movie would be so much different if Tony Todd was not Candyman.
Yeah.
Like, Tony Todd deserves so much credit. He just ate this role up. He's one of the memorable things about it. Like, you remember Tony Todd. And
his voice.
Yeah. Like, his stature, everything about him.
So goddamn beautiful.
He, apparently, he recalled that there was a skepticism from his colleagues about him playing the Candyman due to the number of bee sting injuries that he would probably receive. And he insisted that he wanted to work with the director and said, I've always wanted to come up with to find my own personal Phantom of the Opera. What a guy. And he actually came up with the backstory for Candyman, which is incredible. So Virginia Madsen was friends with Rose, the director, and his then wife, Alexandra Pig. Madsen was originally going to play the role of Bernadette, but then the choice was made to make the character of Bernadette a Black American, so Madsen lost that part. Pig discovered she was pregnant, and so then Helen was offered the I'm getting this all mixed up.
No, you're fine. Virginia.
Yes. Yes. Virginia Madsen was then offered the role of Helen. So then, if Madsen had not been able to step into the role, the producer, Alan Pohl, wanted Sandra Bullock as Helen, which also would have been just a completely different movie.
I liked it that she is blonde. I mean, I've been watching a lot of Hitchcock lately, and I just feel like the way she was shot, she looks like a Hitchcock blonde.
Yeah, totally. Like her hair too, the way they styled it,
and especially when she's wearing the nurse's clothes. Like, to me, she just looks straight out of a Hitchcock movie.
Yeah, it's great. In addition to allowing filmmakers to cover his face with bees, Tony Todd actually agreed to film a scene in which he had a mouthful of bees. So all that was real.
Yeah.
He told TMZ that he wore a dental dam to prevent any bees from sliding into his throat. Which doesn't mean that he didn't suffer a sting or two, or 23 to be exact, over the course of 3 Candyman movies. Though it might have been worth it. I had a great lawyer, he told TMZ, $1,000 a pop.
And I heard that most of the stings were on his chest. They weren't like in his mouth.
Thank goodness.
Although
that still sucks though.
The guy who made the prosthetic for him for his mouth said that one of the bees got behind it. And so Tony Todd could feel the bee like inside his his cheek as he's like delivering a line.
He is just a champ.
He is
a king shit. And he does a great job in the sequel as well. Well, not the sequel, the reboot, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, what does Letterboxd have to say about it? Vivian Juicebox gave it a 0.5 star and said, I have so many questions, Lamau. First of all, what? And I think that's fair. I think this movie, you should watch it more than once.
Oh, yeah,
I think the first time I watched it, I was like, what? So... Stephen Cavalier gave it a 0.5 star and says, seems people focused on the wrong accoutrement when naming this supernatural villain. Should be great big fucking hook, man. Okay, Stephen. Quipjack gave it 1 star and said, I feel like it shouldn't have been difficult to not mess up this premise. They did. They messed it up. Does Candyman break through walls or just show up? I couldn't follow. At least give us more hook kills or something. Penalized 0.5 star for involving a baby in a horror movie, as is my policy. Quipjack,
fuck you, dude.
Here's the thing. First off, fuck you. Secondly, I really feel like there's enough hook kills in it. There's a lot of gore in this movie. They don't hold back. Like, you see everything you can that there is to see, and I don't know. I felt like it is a little bit like, obviously, there's no rules set in place in this movie, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I
He
think
can
there's a
do
mystery to it.
what he wants.
Yeah, he's fucking Candyman.
Why do you have to make it so complicated?
Yeah, there's no science to this. Gerald Bean gave it 1 star and said, mad bizarre. Don't really know what to think or feel about it. Watch it again, Gerald.
That's right.
Patrick Willems gave it 3.5 stars and said, Tony Todd's voice is the 8th wonder of the world.
Agreed.
Matt Lynch gave it 4 stars and said, one of the quotes from the movie, you don't belong here. Gentrified trauma. It's good. Josh Lewis gave it 4 stars and said, uses gentrification in academia in Chicago as an access point to the trauma of slavery being painted over in Reconstruction, before jumping off into a moody urban folklore dream where historical pain is mythologized and martyred in the form of Tony Todd's Candyman, whose incredible physical presence, reverberating voice, and vicious acts of violence serve to draw and heighten his feelings of longing and rage into something tangible and fleshy. Between the excellent location work and Don't Look Now cinematographer Anthony B. Richmond, there's a lot of grimy detail and texture to the image, which amplifies Clive Barker's nasty writing, which shares a lot of Hellraiser's beautifully grotesque / perverse pain and pleasure elements. And Philip Glass's dreamy score. Yeah, Philip Glass fucking kills it. The like dun 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 dun, like that theme for the movie is so good. Not quite sure how to read the ending, which I think some argue as an allegory for appropriation, but feels more like it just lets commercial genre sensibilities overtake its ideas. But up until that point, this is incredibly well realized, and it's clear by all the creepy overhead shots of skyscrapers, expressive graffiti murals, and expensive condo surfaces at war with the dirty, crumbling bricks they're covering up. Rose didn't pass up a single opportunity to visually express the underseen horror of living in the shadow of white real estate development. That was pretty good. Really good. Yeah, I didn't really... That's why you should watch this movie over and over again and think about it so much, because I didn't even think about the whole fact of, like, history being, like, destroyed and built over, you know, and how there's all these beautiful murals in, like, the belly of Cabrini Green that are just going to be torn down and do get torn down in the real future. That's so smart. Jamel Bowie gave it 4 stars. And, oh, sorry, I forgot to say, Josh Lewis also said, full discussion on Ep 187 of my podcast, Sleazoids. So, shout out to Sleazoids. Jamel Bowie gave it 4 stars and said, there are big ideas in this movie. The generational legacy of racist trauma, the ways that trauma can embed itself into the ground itself, and the extent to which our world is built on the wreckage of that trauma. Unfortunately, they aren't carried through the length of the film. By the third act, the ideas are largely jettisoned. What's left is still a thrilling and terrifying supernatural slasher, but I think the movie could have gone to so many interesting places if the filmmakers had carried through on the premise. Still, I see why this is a horror classic. Start to finish, it's one of the most compelling movies in its genre I've ever seen. And I do think that's fair because, again, this is through a white lens. Like, as much as we can say it does a really great job of expressing these things, it doesn't take away from the fact that, like, I do think this is still a movie made for white people, you know? And I feel like the story perhaps and the themes deserve more than that, you know? Like, I feel like it's almost viewed in an academic lens, which might be the very thing it's criticizing. Mm-hmm. And that is important. And I do think by the end, it's all about Helen, who is a white female lead. So I don't hate the movie at all. I
think it's so interesting. I hadn't thought about that. But, you know, it's interesting what we do through story. Mm-hmm. For example, Daniel, whatever his name is, the real Candyman is turned into a villain. Although, of course, he's not a villain. He's you know, been victimized. And 2021 tries to take the ideas of generational trauma, you know, and just sort of explain the character and explain how trauma can, affects the whole community. And I don't know if they were, fully successful in that, but I think it was quite a big swing, and I think it was mostly successful. But then, as we were talking about Helen, she's not perfect either, but she's deified at the end, into this like white angel. And so I think it's really a great commentary on racism and what we do when we tell stories. But I think it's also an interesting analysis that these are white people making this movie.
Yeah.
Itself, and their limitations in telling the story come through.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like, we still can realize that these are made by people observing prejudice and not the victims of it itself, and there could be really great themes that shine light on it, but at the same time, I don't think we should give it like the credit of like, wow, this, we should give more stage to Black voices talking about this rather than white men describing it.
I feel like in 1992, it probably was a wow thing. And I think it was like, wow, yeah, hey, we hadn't thought about it like that, Mr. Rose, but wow, you've really given us something to think about. Whereas now we look at it and we're like, okay, take a seat,
Right. Yeah. Because anything that we do, if we're not a part of a group that's oppressed, is like, we are just parroting things that other people have said. There's no white person that can make a unique observation on the suffering of any person of color, right. Like, we can only have insight into how maybe a white person views it, but anything else, we're just taking what others have said, and those voices should be amplified rather than copied. And finally, Megan Bichel gave it 4 stars and said, "Imagine dying for your thesis." So, in B's, how would you rate this?
4 B's. 4-ish B's. I don't know. What about you?
I think 4 B's is good.
4 B's.
I think it's still a really good movie, though, and if you are a white filmmaker, like, it's like, there's, I feel like they certainly still had really, really interesting takes and views on it, and maybe put this hopefully in front of people maybe who wouldn't have thought about it before. And I think the original story is great. And I think the actors kill it. What have we learned?
Well, if you already said it, you sort of said it with the Trevor thing, like... Yeah. Just be careful who you hitch your wagon to, I guess. Like, you can tell who a person is. Don't lie to yourself about what you're seeing in front of your eyes.
Yeah. Because Helen wasn't surprised.
But also, don't get taken up. Don't get like hypnotized by romance. Because you will get fucking killed. It will kill you. Romance is fucking dangerous.
Yeah, we let people into our deepest, most inner part of ourselves, but you can't necessarily vet those people before you do that, I think some people open the gooey parts of them way too early, and then somebody can just get their hand on it, and then it's a lot harder to wrench it free.
It's not to say that, I think maybe we just need to redefine what we mean by romance or what we mean by love, because I feel like you can definitely have a deep, abiding connection with somebody. But this vision of, be my victim, surrender to me, that's not it.
Yeah. That's definitely, it belongs in a Clive Barker novel, Would we watch it again?
Yeah. Yes.
Definitely. Do you have a favorite scene and or death?
I like it all. I really like it all. I think it's very fast. Like, what is it, 101 minutes? But I mean, it feels shorter to me. It feels like it really just clipped. I don't feel like there's like dead space in this. It just all kind of, everything kind of fits into, I don't know. I kind of like the segment with Jake where he's telling her about Candyman, the fake Candyman, that whole section. And then she gets clobbered at the end of that. And then Jake saves her. I just like that whole sequence.
It's like, he warned you, and now he's got to help you because you fucked around and you found out.
Yep.
You had to traumatize this kid.
Yeah.
Who wins the You Fool Award? Helen. Come on, Helen.
Yeah, I feel so bad for Bernadette because, like, she's so young and so sweet and so smart, and she dies anyway too.
Which is another great, maybe another great note of like, she warns Helen, and Helen gets her killed for her own blind kind of entitlement and kind of stupidity.
Yeah, I think that's what arrogance and hubris, gets you. I love it. I love this movie.
Me too.
All right, La Llorona. Here's the plot summary from IMDb. An aging paranoid war criminal, protected by his faithful wife, faces death while being haunted by the ghosts of his past. This was directed by Jairo Bustamante, written by Bustamante and Lisandro Sanchez, and it stars Maria Mercedes Coroy, Margarita Kenefic, and Sabrina de la Hoz. I don't know how to say that name. Sabrina de la Hoz. Cinematography is by Nicolas Wong Diaz and edited by Gustavo Mathieu and Jairo Bustamante. The release date was the 30th of August 2019 in Venice, and it has a running time of 97 minutes. I watched it on Shudder.
Same. Make sure you put in the director's name because there's a lot of La Lloronas out there.
There's the Curse of La Llorona. There's the Legend of La Llorona. Yeah, so be careful.
Just typing in La Llorona will not. The first thing that comes up is the Curse of La Llorona.
And it came out the same year, so just be real careful. Put in Bustamante.
Yeah.
Or Guatemala.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, who is Letona?
Letona is the security guard.
Ah, okay. Because sometimes I knew everybody, and I just was like, who's that?
Yeah.
I feel like they never had a moment where they're like, this is Letona.
First of all, beautiful movie, photographed really nicely, and the composition of the shots, you could go like shot by shot. This is one of those you could do that. So we started,
I had no idea it was so sad.
It's it is also very rough. Mm-hmm. There's a close-up of the matriarch whisper praying. And this was also something to be aware of. This is subtitled, but I thought that I had rented a wrong version where there were no subtitles. Did that happen to you?
Because I was like, what is she saying?
At first, the first, say, minute, there's no subtitles for that. But just keep going. You'll be fine. Anyway, so she's whisper praying, and the camera pushes out to reveal the other women of the family, some of whom have their hands raised and almost touching the raised hand of someone else in a circle. And then we get the title card. The men are in another room discussing how to appear in public and how much danger they are in if the general goes down. Some servants pray for Enrique's health to recover. So Sarah is the granddaughter. She asks her mother why people on the internet say mean things about her grandfather. And Enrique hears a wailing and retrieves a revolver from his gun wall. He goes into this room, and I mean, it's like straight out of Tremors, right?
Yeah. Old senile people should not be allowed to be near guns.
No. He searches the house for the source of the crying, stealthily walking through the darkened house. He turns and shoots his gun at what turns out to be his wife. And Valeriana, who is sort of the head servant, grabs him and calls for Latona, the security guard, to take the gun away. Natalia is the daughter. She enters the kitchen and kneels beside her mother. So Enrique yells at Latona that there's a spy in the house, and Latona tells him calmly that there is no spy, just Valeriana. The servants are gathered, and most of them are looking at the floor, sort of submissively. They're gathered, and they asked if they heard anyone crying in the house, and they all shake their heads no. But then someone says it was her, and that she was not near, despite the fact that Enrique heard her in his ear. Mm-hmm. Valeriana tells them to be quiet and tells Natalia, that all that's happening is Enrique is getting old. Natalia tells Enrique that he cannot keep his gun. So we have a very old former dictator, and he is being haunted. Of course, no one knows it at this point. So it does appear that he's just senile. Mm-hmm. And he is paranoid. That's a pretty good description. But obviously, he's dangerous. The next morning, Carmen and Natalia are dressed very nicely, sipping coffee in the kitchen. Natalia is examining the damage to the door jamb from the bullet and notes that he almost got Carmen last night. Natalia says that her father will feel better after the verdict. Valeriana enters with all the servants and tells Carmen that the servants want to leave because they are afraid.
And also, I wouldn't really want to work for such a piece of shit.
Carmen and Natalia say this is bad timing and that the servants are ungrateful. Valeriana says that before they leave, the servants want their benefits.
These people, not the servants, the fucking family, like Carmen's like, you'll never find a place that treats you as good as us. Well, I think we will because take a look at your husband who's shooting at you in the middle of the night. I think I'd choose any place over this.
But they're really at cross purposes because it's very urgent for the servants to leave right now. Whereas for the family, the urgent matter is going to receive the verdict. And they're just really not communicating at all. But at the trial, here we get another really beautiful shot of a woman who's older. She's wearing this incredible veil. One of the posters for the movie is a shot of this woman's face, obscured by the veil. And it's a beautifully embroidered veil that has embroidery going up her cheeks. And really all you can just sort of see the barest of features. And then there's this incredible woven pattern along the side. It's really gorgeous.
Yeah, I couldn't stop looking at it.
Yeah. And this scene is really amazing because it's just a still on her face. It pulls out a little, so you see the translator translating her words. And then after that, you see this huge crowd behind her. But at first, it starts off just on her face. And she's saying that the guerrilla fled when they heard the army was near. I didn't see it coming. When I saw the fire, I grabbed my children and ran. The violence came so abruptly. First, they set our crops on fire, then our homes, our clothes, and our cattle. They separated the women and the children from the few men that were still there. We were raped, and then the killing began. Some of us managed to flee to the mountains. The cloud cover protected us from the helicopters that were trying to find us. But there was no food, and so we had to come back down. That's when they captured me and took me to the military base. The soldiers had their way with me. I wasn't the only one there. We didn't do anything. We were in our homes. And she lifts the veil and drapes it over her forehead and wipes her tears and says, I'm not embarrassed to tell you what happened to me. I hope you're not embarrassed to do justice. A man and a woman behind her stand up and start to leave. And outside the courtroom, Natalia sits in thought. And behind her, a reporter is filming. I really like this shot. The reporter says that the trial's in the second month and that Enrique said that all the people who were attacked were insurgents. No civilians were killed, and there was no genocide. The reporter continues, on the other hand, the victim's defense calls the general a genocidal murderer and says that between 1982 and 1983, an average of 3,000 people were killed per month by the National Army, which is a third of the Mayan Ixil people. As the reporter speaks, Latona gives tea to Natalia and encourages her to go back to the courtroom. So again, this reality is happening in the background, but Latona is just like caretaking Natalia.
It's just so like, what's so hard about it is like, I don't know, just like how horrible these like crimes are. And yet the family is like, you know, they're like, oh, you poor thing, you know, must be so hard to have your dad go through this. And it's like, oh my God. And it's just only, and like, you know,
Enrique Monteverde sits in the courtroom attached to an ivy. Really nice touch. I love this attorney too. His attorney says that he never ordered or even proposed that the Guatemalan army kill a certain race, ethnic group, or religious group. And that is why there was never a genocide in Guatemala. As Enrique testifies, all he was trying to do was to create a national identity. Voices from the crowd start shouting, liar and murderer. He says he's innocent and he doesn't understand what he's being accused of. The judge is like,
fuck you.
Okay, sir. She states that there have been a number of documents entered into evidence which classify the Mayan Ixil people as enemies of the state. 38% of the victims were under 12 years old. The harm done surpasses all human understanding. It has harmed not just the direct victims of the massacre, but the whole social fabric of Guatemala. Carmen stares ahead, but Natalia glances over at the group of women whose heads are completely covered by the veils, like the one witness 82 wore. The judge continues, telling the truth helps heal wounds from the past. As she speaks, people stand up in the back and begin to take photos. The judge says, given that the general knew what was happening under his command and did nothing to stop those actions, he is found guilty of genocide. The courtroom erupts into applause. The women remove their veils and applaud. The general begins to cough. Cut to Enrique's in the hospital smoking as a nurse pours liquor from a flask into a glass for him. She smiles as he watches TV.
He's like, heaven sent me an angel to take care of me. So this guy's just a skis through and through.
Yeah, absolutely. But I really like that. He's coughing. He's this poor sick old man is just being attacked. And then you see the reality where on the TV, the speaker is saying that people are willing to give false testimony for some money. Where does the money come from? Your taxes. The speaker is asked about the judge's performance, and the speaker says that the judge is a criminal and will be sent to jail. Okay, so Natalia is starting to suspect her father. And so she asks her mom if her dad ever, if her dad told her everything, or did he just give orders? Like she's just trying to make sense of what actually happened. Carmen asks if Natalia believes those prostitutes over her own father. Natalia says that there's no way that they could have made up those stories. You have to have lived through them to tell stories like that. And Carmen says that the women offered themselves to the soldiers at the base, and the soldiers, wanted to give them jobs as housekeepers. But yes, some of the soldiers did use them as whores.
It's like it's like, barring the fact that she said something so disrespectful, saying that they offered themselves up, it's like then being like, I mean, they did get raped.
Yeah.
What?
But she's got such, she doesn't see them as people, she just sees them as other and, less than human, I guess. And so, but this story what really happened was the women were raped and were abducted and taken to be raped on the base. But the story that the wife believes is that these women were begging to become whores to these soldiers.
It's like, that's never happened.
Why would that happen?
Not in human history has ever happened that like the people who are getting like literally like that the military is literally like against, quote unquote, would be like, use us. What?
Natalia's like, wait a minute, Mom. I remember that every time Dad went to the base, you two were fighting. And Carmen says, well, I mean, even generals are men. And, and Natalia's like, it's not even about that. And then Carmen's like, whose side are you on? You're going to believe those communists?
Oh, boy.
And Natalia's like, don't mix things up, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I just want to know what you knew. And then Carmen says that they have to move on for the country to move on. What's in the past is in the past. If we look back, we will be turned into salt statues, which is a pretty wonderful thing to say, right? Because, I mean, she's making an allusion to Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot's wife being turned into a pillar of salt. And at the house, Carmen smiles and Natalia looks concerned as the TV reports that the general has been in the hospital for a week and that the trial has been annulled since no evidence of genocide could be found. The general is released and smokes a cigarette in the back of the ambulance. He's outfitted with a bulletproof vest, and everyone is cautioned not to talk to the press as they go into the mansion. And then we hear sounds of projectiles hitting the sides of the ambulance.
And like the journey from like they have like a guy who's like, when we get out there, just go, because it's like wild. There's like hordes of people, you know, like not just press people, but obviously protesters who are just like, whoa, just, you know, there's the crowd shots in this movie are incredible. Mm-hmm. I feel like those must be so difficult to organize, and like you're there. You're always within that moment in the movie.
Yeah. The general and his family are shuttled into the house by Latona and heavily protected guards. I mean, heavily protected. Like, they've got the shields and the masks and everything. And Valeriana says that every one of the servants has left. Sarah is distressed to see her mother covered in cow's blood, and she wants to go back to her own house. But they can't. The general rests, and sounds of protests are heard outside. When the general wakes up, he asks Latona if he heard anyone crying. The general looks outside and sees a young woman in white calmly walking up to the guards, and she stares up at him.
It follows.
She's so, I don't know if she like never blinks or like, I don't know what she is, but she's like such a powerful presence. Mm-hmm. And she's just like, people are shouting in this protest, and she just like wends her way all the way up to the front door.
She's so beautiful. She's got these like long black hair, like that's very straight, and like, oh, she's so gorgeous.
So she's going to be the new maid. No one else came because they were afraid. Sarah is immediately taken with her. She like loves her right away. And Valeria,
she's like, can I grow my hair like that?
Yeah.
Can I wear a dress like that?
Valeriana shows the woman around. Alma is the name of the woman. Alma means soul. Alma climbs up onto the top bunk of the bed, and then I don't know, they're having a little chit chat, I guess. Valeriana's just like telling her like about the house and things like that. And then there's this like kind of wacky shot where Alma hangs her head down past the bunk. So, but first you see her hair come down, and then you see her head. And then the next shot is that she's like dunking her face inside a basin of water, but it's from the bottom of the basin. So you see her hair first and then her face. It's a really, really cool shot. Valeriana tells her that there are showers in the house that she can use. And they're shouting from protesters outside, "We want them alive. We want them alive." And the family is just now like trapped inside of this house. Carmen tells Sarah it's good news, though. She can skip school. But Sarah's like, I want to go to school.
Yeah, like, there's no good news here.
But Natalia's like, this is only going to be for a few days.
Girl.
Alma is peering in from the kitchen, and she's holding a frog. Did you notice?
Yes. I do love she's just like holding it, and like Sarah's just like, I mean, if you were a little kid like Sarah, you would be like,
so cool.
Hell yeah.
I want to hang out with the lady who's got the frog in her hands.
Yeah. And I do love that there's nothing. I feel like sometimes in ghost things, there is something about like, you know, innocent people sometimes getting caught in the crosshairs. And I mean, I think you could argue that most people in this family are not innocent, even if they didn't take part in it. Like, you're aiding and abetting this guy not getting his just desserts. But Sarah truly is innocent, you know, and I just do love that there's nothing ever sinister projected towards her, you know?
Yeah. Sarah is intrigued and follows her. Oh, Enrique says that his daughter and granddaughter should move into the house. They'll be safer there. And just then a rock comes through the window. Natalia goes looking for Sarah and finds that the window in the bedroom has also been broken, and there are flyers that have been attached to these rocks and thrown through the windows. And the flyers are contain the faces of the disappeared. Talia sees a frog swimming in the swimming pool, and that the top of the swimming pool is covered with these flyers. Natalia hears counting in Spanish, and she sees that Sarah's head is submerged in a tub. And she pulls her daughter out of the tub, and Sarah's really pissed off. She's like, I was trying to get to 21. Like, you like interrupted me. And she's trying to learn how to hold her breath underwater.
And like, I guess Alma's encouraging that she learns how to hold her breath.
For a very sad reason. Carmen finds Enrique outside watching Alma retrieve the flyers from the swimming pool. And Alma looks up at Carmen. Sarah tells Natalia that Alma has 2 kids. And here's a little bit of Natalia's racism. She's like, Alma's so young. And she's like, oh, well, I guess, yeah. I mean, Native women do have a lot of children young. And Sarah's like, oh, no, they're already dead. And Natalia's just sort of like brought up short by that.
It hits you like a gut punch.
There's some deep focus action. Carmen is in bed and Enrique is smoking near the window. He wanders outside the house and sees that there's steam coming up from the pool. Very cool shot. Alma emerges from the pool, and he spies on her as she walks through the house. He follows her into the bedroom where the floor is submerged in water. Alma sits on the edge of the tub, naked, wringing out her dress. Enrique stares at her. She looks back at him. Carmen finds him, and she turns on the light and finds Enrique standing there with an erection. She disgustedly turns away from him as Alma calls out to Valeriana, help me, he's harassing me. Latona, Natalia, and Sarah come in and are disgusted by Don Enrique. Latona helps a wheezing Enrique up the stairs. Enrique says the floor was flooded. Carmen says she doesn't want him in her room. And there's a really lovely shot here on the stairs with like the daughter and the granddaughter sort of holding grandma's hand and comforting her. And Carmen says that Don Enrique has always liked chasing women, especially Native women.
It's like, what makes more sense? You know, I know they're just lying to themselves because they know, like, with that much, like, you know, but it's just still like, oh my God, like, this is just so clearly like a sick, fucking, stupid, twisted man, you know? He's giving you evidence every day that he's a horrible man.
I know, I thought about that, but what would it be like to be married to him? Like,
I wouldn't. I simply wouldn't be.
But I mean, a lot of people are, though, right? And they have to tell themselves stories like this.
But I feel like there are like you hear stories also about like, children who showed really, problematic behavior and the parents just let it happen, or believed like that's not them. But then you hear stories of parents who are like, I found all these guns in my kid's, under his bed, and they immediately report it. And it's like, so like, yes, I do understand, but I feel like she is supposed to be also twisted, because like,
oh yeah,
she might not have wanted to know, but she did know, and she knew for so long,
right.
And still tells herself and her whole family a lie about it. So like, I'm not saying that's the same thing as doing it, but it does make you a piece of shit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do find it hard to understand why you would stay with somebody. I mean, you'd have to tell yourself so many lies for so long. And when you like sit down, like in that one scene where Natalia's like, wait, Mom, come on. Like, Let's be real here. Let's stop muddying the waters. I just want to know what you knew.
Yeah. I feel like you gotta, it's probably easier for a person like that to do it when it is a hate crime against, oppressed peoples, because that's the thing you can tell yourself. Like, Native women have a lot of kids, or, stuff like that, where you're like, it's even if it is like in their heads, they're like, even if it is wrong, do they not kind of deserve this treatment?
Right, exactly.
If it was happening to people like me, sure, I'd be upset. But since it's happening to them, is it really even that bad?
I mean, this just happened with Jordan Neely, being like strangled to death in broad daylight in public and being blamed for being homeless.
Yeah.
Like, it's enough to make you insane. It's insanity. Yeah. So I just feel like, I mean, if you're willing to see other people as not people, then you can make these stories make sense. But if you think that every single person is a person, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Then your prejudice has to exist, like, for that. Like, I'm not saying, but like, for that person, they have to be that way to make it make sense.
Yes. Otherwise, I mean, and that's why the military, does what it does. They dehumanize you, they dehumanize the enemy, and all this. I mean, it's all very well calculated, and, but it's maddening. And it's sort of maddening watching this movie and watching Carmen like so deep in her denial.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's just even like, that's what it's so difficult, this movie. Mm-hmm. It's important that it is made. And I feel like, I mean, I don't know, because I'm not obviously a part of the culture, but it seems like it's telling that story, like, of a real thing, that happened, is happening,
and Bustamante said that, people in Guatemala, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to talk about it, you know? And I'm sure there are people who just say, well, it just didn't happen. Or it's not as bad. Can't be as bad as what people are saying.
Yeah.
Or somehow they were at fault for... Yeah. I mean...
WoHos, something that is important to remember is, like, none of us are immune to propaganda. It's like, that's literally its reason for existence. And I just feel like that's, it's just so good to question, like, literally everything, in my opinion. If somebody else's, if an idea is being presented to you as an empirical truth, I feel like that's a woo, warning bell, Like, if the empirical truth is people are human and we should treat them with respect, okay, you can believe that one.
I can believe that one.
But
that one's
other
probably
things,
true.
Yeah, other things that are like, well, this group of people just does this. It's like, but they don't. They're so good at not even being that overt. Yeah. Like, that's just why, I don't know. You got to be careful.
I just feel like lately there's just so much. People are saying like the quiet part out loud, though. Like the people who are like trying to take away school lunches from children. It's just like,
what reasoning do you have?
What are you even fucking saying?
And the absolute, like, I mean, it's not one of the most maddening things is then also the like, I mean, I feel this with like all the trans stuff is like the guys that it's helping, like we're helping children. Oh, it's for the children. It's just like, you do not care. Like, you've never cared and you don't care for it. And not even just for trans kids. It's like, you don't care about any child.
No,
like,
you
fuck them. You hate them. You don't give a shit about them. It's just like, it just sucks that so many groups get blamed for all these things that are just like, they're the biggest victims of, it's just is so
Sarah seems concerned that her grandpa did something to Alma, which I like. I mean, Sarah's really the only one who can see anything clearly.
Sarah's a real one.
Natalia apologizes to Alma on her father's behalf. And then Carmen says that Alma shouldn't wear her uniform because it is too tight.
Oh, of course it's her fault. Of course it would be her fault. Duh.
Natalia tells Enrique that he has to apologize to Alma as a formality and because it would cause a scandal if she reported him.
But I feel like even Enrique has this moment, like his face is kind of like, no, it wouldn't, Is that not the whole point? Like, no, but she comes out and says that. Well, she's a viper. We were trying to help her,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's very true. But I mean, I think up to this point, I was sort of on Natalia's side. I was just like, oh, good. Like she's starting to see the light. But no, she's not.
No. And I like that.
Yeah, me too.
That. Yeah, because we've seen in her, like, she's benefited from having him as her dad, so it would hurt her also,
yes,
to have this come out. And once you start playing that game, it's just like, you also are not innocent. Thinking that it's bad does not make you an innocent person. It makes you worse. It makes you worse to know it's bad and to let it continue.
Outside, the protesters chant, "My people, where are you? Out here, being peaceful. Remember, we are not like them. Remember, people together will never be defeated. Nobody quits, nobody forgets. Enrique Monteverde is a genocidal murderer." Carmen looks into the mirror and washes her hands. Natalia tells Carmen to check her eyes, and Natalia thinks it's conjunctivitis. Yeah, so Carmen is getting it's so interesting. And I thought about this, and what a great metaphor. Like, it's two different, it's like, not to be a philosophy professor about this, but I mean, this is very allegory of the cave. So when the prisoner, was released and let out into the light, it was painful.
Yeah.
It's painful to see the truth. And that's what's happening to Carmen. And so her eyes are just like this disgusting red color. Carmen intimates that Valeriana might be Don Enrique's child. And then she says that the Lord gives the biggest challenges to his best servants.
Like,
Carmen, get over yourself, dude.
And then she says, well, maybe it was a godsend. What would I do without her?
I know.
Bro, it's like every new layer. It's like, fuck these people.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's presented in such a not, like, kind of evil way. It's like, this is the evil that exists.
Exactly.
And God, just, like has probably assaults, some poor woman, and has this daughter that since, she is like since she is Kachiko, well, she's got to be our servant now,
Yeah.
Yeah, you can be a part of this family, but you have to work for us for your whole life. Jesus Christ. That's the real horror in this movie. Like, this whole story is just so sad and scary.
Yeah, it is. Natalia asks her dad about Valeriana, and he defers. He calls her princess, and he says he loves her, and he holds her hand. And she's like, I know. And she takes his hand and puts it back on his own stomach. Sarah calls the music playing outside beautiful. So again, she's the only one who can really see reality. Carmen has a dream that she's hiding in a field with 2 children. She runs with them into a hut and hugs them close to her, covering their mouths. In her dream, she wets herself, and when she wakes up, she discovers she has really wet herself. The next morning, Natalia gives her an adult diaper and says that it is normal at her age. Carmen is humiliated, her eyes are red, and she looks up sadly at her daughter.
Good.
Sarah is practicing holding her breath underwater with Alma, and there's a pretty shot of Alma and Sarah looking through the curtains. Ooh, I loved this. Yeah. Sarah is identifying faces in the crowd that correspond to the faces of the disappeared on the flyers. So that's like what? Starting to put the pieces together of who.
And those people are like staring in a different way.
Yes, they're completely quiet. Else. Yes. I love the direction of that, because you're like, oh, okay.
What's going on?
Natalia looks through the flyers as the newscaster says that the division in the country is growing wider. Natalia asks Latona if he finds it odd that Sarah's father disappeared all of a sudden. There was one line when she was with her dad. She's like, why did you hate Sarah's father so much? And the Enrique says, no, he hated you, or like you hated him, or something like that. Like,
he hated you.
He hated you. Yeah. So
which, like, again, like that part, I am a little bit confused as to that whole storyline. Like, I don't really understand.
I think the implication is that Don Enrique had the father taken out.
But like, why? We don't ever know why.
Who knows?
I felt like that part was a little bit weird and underexplored.
Yeah, but also it's sort of like we were talking about this in the context of some other movie. It's like, if you would think that your dad would like have your husband killed, like how could you have lunch with the guy? Like, I don't get.
Even if the thought like crosses your mind, the father of your daughter, like they're horrible. They're horrible people, except for Sarah.
Yes, except for Sarah. So Latona's like, I don't know about any of that, and it's probably better if you don't look into that. In the foreground, Sarah and Alma are playing checkers, and in the background, Carmen and Enrique are talking. And he says something, and she smacks him in the face and leaves the room. Alma and Natalia talk about the fathers of their children. Yeah, that's kind of a sweet thing. Yeah,
because she's like, where did the father of your children go? And Alma's like, I don't know. But he didn't leave me. Mm-hmm. And Natalia says the same thing. But again, it's like scenes with people who are like, maids or servants with the people that, are their bosses, it's just so uncomfortable, because she's like, take a seat, but you can't, you have to, it's not something you're saying in a friendly way. It's like a command every time. So it's like, why should she open up about anything to you? Yeah.
Carmen's nightmare returns. Soldiers capture her and her children. Carmen wakes up distressed, on the verge of tears, and then she does begin to cry. Alma is sitting on the floor as Sarah blows her hair dry. Oh, this is great too. Because first you just see the hair like flowing around, and then then it's revealed that that Sarah is blowing her hair dry. And then Sarah shouts out a Spanish word, and Alma repeats the word in Kachiko. So that's kind of a nice thing too. So Alma is teaching her. Enrique calls to Valeriana to move the bed, and they find that there's black mold on the wall.
Oh my God. I love scenes like this. Like, he's like, this is what's making me sick. And like, yeah. Yeah, probably.
And she says that it's black magic. He tells her to clean it up, and she says that they have to clean him up first. He's taking oxygen, and Valeriana prays over him, asking that all the negative energy leave the family. It's sort of like what's a good analogy for this?
It's like trying to put a Band-Aid on like a gaping wound, Will this help? No. But that does nothing. Spirits don't care what you're talking about.
Also, it's not he's the negative. He's the cause of it. It's not that.
Take him out.
Exactly. Outside, Carmen and Natalia look down on a silent crowd. Alma and Valeriana clean the wall. Valeriana said that she spoke to someone in their town to get more help, but her friend didn't know Alma. Valeriana asks her where she's from, and Alma says she lived in the area where the military camp was. And then Valeriana's like, how old are you? And Alma says she doesn't remember. Sarah walks through the house at night, and Latona follows her with a gun. Yeah, he doesn't realize that it's Sarah. And that's a little scary, because again,
I was so scared he was going to hurt her.
Yeah. Sarah disconnects the oxygen.
I cheered. I was like, woohoo!
From her grandpa, right? And she takes
this kid rocks.
She takes the oxygen tank away.
What I feel like she really does look disgusted at him too. Like there's no love in her, just reproach.
Latona stalks through the house and is stopped by the girl and the boy from Carmen's dream.
And they're just like, come with us.
Sarah takes the oxygen tank and jumps into the pool. And that wakes up Natalia. Sarah's under the water, breathing with the aid of the oxygen tank. Enrique goes out to the pool. Alma goes under the water, which seems to be covered with lily pads and also flyers. Enrique shoots into the water and hits Sarah in the arm. That's it for Natalia. She's just like, get the fuck away from my daughter. And everybody goes back into the house, but Sarah looks outside at the pool and she sees that the ground is just like carpeted with frogs. Now there are people inside the gate. Somehow the ghosts have like gotten inside the gate, and Valeriana says that there's no way for the guards to keep them out. They hear a wailing that pierces the night. Sarah says
Valeriana also tries some more bullshit prayers. She's like, don't harm the innocent.
Yeah, she's kind of like, if Don Enrique did anything to offend you, spirits, okay, cool.
Don't hurt us.
But we're innocent. Please don't hurt us.
Valeriana is such an interesting character too, because she really is dedicated to them, and she even stands in front of Enrique once, because Natalia gets the gun and points it at him, and she's like, show him respect. What the fuck is wrong with you? You need so much help, Valeriana.
Sarah says that, so they hear this, it's terrible crying, and Sarah says that it's Alma crying out for her children, and that Alma has known her grandpa for a long time. She also asked Sarah, and that Alma told Sarah, please don't drown.
Oh my god. This, like, is. It's just. Again, I feel like this is such a good story because Alma is, like, so protective over Sarah, and, like, literally teaching her to hold her breath underwater is this, like, the saddest thing I've, like, ever heard.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Sarah starts to choke, and Carmen goes into this weird trance. We're back in the dream. She's forced to kneel, and the soldiers question her in Spanish, but she doesn't understand the language. I'm going to cry. Oh my God. Hold on. I don't know. That just hit me for a second. But, the soldiers are just, where are the gorillas and, all this other stuff. And she's like, I don't understand what you're saying. She says she's not a gorilla. And then she's forced to watch the soldiers drown her children. She looks up and she sees Don Enrique. He's the one giving the orders. And then she hears a shot. And then Carmen, looks down and it's Alma's body on the ground. And she chokes Enrique in the dream. And then we cut back to reality and she's actually choking the life out of Enrique. And Natalia, Valeriana, and Sarah are just looking on. At the funeral, Taps plays and the family is offered condolences. Another general goes into the bathroom and hears a woman crying. The floor starts to flood, and the last sound of the movie is Alma crying out for her children.
It's just like, even in the movie, justice is not served because the people outside said, we want them alive. It's like, he gets to die still an innocent man in everybody's eyes, and nothing has changed in the family, like Sarah, again, I think is, hopefully she grows up and gets estranged and is like, fuck y'all. But it's like, even though, like, Carmen has gone through that, it's like, doesn't.
And I feel
justice is not served.
Like there's a little hope at the end that, hopefully this next general will also meet, some kind of justice. But I also think it's like, well, there's just another one, like there's evil. There's just like uncounted evil.
And it's the system also. It's like, you have to kill so many things. It's like the system that allows it, the people themselves, it's like that. It's really sad, where it's kind of like, but has anything really changed? Has anything been fixed? This old guy who is already on death's door is dead. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think we can say the same thing, in our country. I mean, really, there's just so much evil that hasn't been addressed in our history. And I like that one line that says, talking or telling the truth heals the wounds of the past. But that's the point. You have to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And most people, I would say, or I don't know percentages, but I mean, it does hurt to tell the truth. I mean, if it's on a personal level, or it's just like us as Americans facing the evils in our past and the evils in our present, it's just like, it's easier not to tell the truth.
Yeah. Or to make the story something more palatable.
Yeah. And who wants to believe it?
Yeah. Because then also you have to know. Well, also, it's like, there's so many things. It's like, you have to change, which people don't want to do. And then it's like, the system that does uphold you, like, does benefit you, has to change. And you don't want that.
No.
So
this movie was the official submission of Guatemala for the Best International Feature Film category of the 93rd Academy Awards in 2021. It is also the first Guatemalan film to ever be nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Foreign Language Film. There are variations of the myth of La Llorona. Typically, it's associated with colonialism, that La Llorona was a native woman who bore Spaniard conquistadors' children and drowned them when he abandoned them. So taking this story, I think, was a really genius way of talking about Guatemala's past and, sort of connecting a well-known urban legend. What does Letterboxd have to say about it? Gray Underwood gave it 5 stars. A heartfelt, eerie, contemplative response to the horrific crimes and human rights violations perpetrated by the Montt regime during the Guatemalan Civil War, and a stark reminder that horror cinema has the potential to generate reflection and healing in addition to fear and disgust. Saula Nolan gave it 5 stars. One of the best films that mixes folklore and the internal armed conflict in Guatemala. Without a doubt, I hit a key in my heart when I saw the scene that should have been scary, but on the contrary, I felt so much sadness for the souls of those killed by the military during the dictatorship. Simply a work of art by Bustamante. Val IRL gave it 5 stars. Perfect revenge plot. The ending was so satisfying and had such a well thought out climax, unsettling in a way that you can't help but cheer for. Luis gave it 5 stars. Wow. I mean, there's nothing else I can say, just wow. This is such a beautifully crafted anti-fascist film that blends the supernatural elements of the classic Latin American folktale of La Llorona and the political history of the Guatemala and the real-life 1982 genocide of the indigenous Mayan population in such a sensitive and heartbreaking way. It's tragic as all hell, but man, is it beautiful. It's a very straightforward story of atonement and justice, as well as repercussions. It's a very haunting story, and I'll definitely be thinking about it for a while. Kawatsi gave it 1 star. Impressively boring. Stillness is the Movie gave it 1 star. It's a serious drama in which none of the characters has an internal life. That's true horror.
What?
I don't get that one.
I don't agree.
Moara gave it 1 star. Pésimo, which means the worst.
The worst.
I was at one point I was going to try to get a review like that every show, but it's been a while. How would we rate this film, Mac? How about frogs?
Oh yeah, I like that. I mean, I see no issues with it, honestly. Like 5 frogs.
5 frogs, yeah.
Like, I can't think of a thing where I was like, nah. Like, all of it I was like invested in.
That's good. I worried about that because it is really slow. It's a slow burn. I mean, kind of like the Candyman, La Llorona doesn't show up for what, half hour, 45 minutes, something like that. So
I think just the story is so gut punching that like, I don't know. It's like, to me, it's a slow burn, but I think it's so much better than like atmospheric horror. Like I don't feel like it was boring at all. Like it does. I feel like something is happening every scene.
Yeah, I agree. Would we watch it again?
Yes, but in a few months.
Yeah,
I think I need I don't know if I could take watching it again right away.
Did you have a favorite scene?
I mean, I think the part at the end with all of the ghosts outside, that was a great image, and I don't know, just the idea of like kind of quietly like imposing in is like really scary.
Yeah, I like that too. I liked how noisy the protests were in the beginning, and then gradually they get quieter and quieter and quieter until they're silent.
It's like that's the kind of horror when you're lying, like when those characters are quietly in their own life just thinking about what's happening. It's like it's less loud and more like the horror like creeping in on you. Yeah,
nicely said, Mac.
Thank you.
Well, maybe we should shut it down. We've been talking for a while.
Yeah, it's a little bit. This is a long one.
Thank you for joining us for this episode and for all your support. It means the world of horror to us truly. Next time, we're going off-road a little with a Willem Dafoe / Robert Eggers special. We will be looking at The Lighthouse and The Northman. After that, we will be looking at anthology films with the original VHS and 3 Extremes 2. Coming up on the Quinnisode, Quinny and I will be looking at A Clockwork Orange and the Parallax View. And now that I am, for all intents and purposes, off for the summer, I'll be working on some World of Foundational Horror episodes. These are vintage international horror films that serve to fill in the blanks of my own knowledge of horror. We would welcome your support in the form of a 5-star review or thumbs up on your preferred listening platform, but we will settle for you just telling all your friends all about us. On that, there's a shout out to our WoHos in various area codes. Hello to WoHos in Greensboro, Frankfurt, Chapel Hill, Ashburn, Sacramento, Montpelier, Stony Creek, Nightdale, Hamilton, and Madrid. If you'd like a specific shout out, please get in touch. Mac, what do you have going on?
Well, as always, you can follow me on my art Instagram and art Tumblr at Macaritaville.
Remember, WoHos, we love you. And don't go into the basement.